Today we'll be creating these fun eyeball paintings. One is a dragon's eye and the other a human eye, and they're done with the pouring technique and then detailed with acrylic paint and paint pens. So for this dragon's eye pour, we'll need a 30cm round canvas, some black and gold paint, and these are in the satin range, some green, blue, red and gold glitter paint, some clay varnish, a large flat and large filbert brush, and these are in the Gallery Series brush set here, and acrylic paint pens. Now, as everybody knows, dragon eyeballs are gold, so we'll first be painting the canvas with gold paint and then embellishing it with glitter. So let's get into it. This is gold acrylic paint, and I just squeeze it out directly onto the canvas and disperse it with a large flat brush. Okay, well that's all on. We'll let that dry, then we'll start the second part. So that gold's nice and dry. Now we can pour the glitter paint on it. Now, in case you don't know, this is a great little idea. I like to pour inside an old canvas and that catches all the paint. And I step the canvas panel off with 3 little thumbtacks here, and that stops it from sticking. It's really cool. All right, so let's fill our cup up with our colours, and that's some red, some gold, and if you use these 4 colours you get a hologram look to it. It's pretty cool. Blue and green, and then repeat it again. We then flip the cup and let the glitter paint cover our canvas. We can then pour a little of the leftover glitter paint onto the pour. A round pattern is created to add a little more interest. Once this is all poured out, allow it to dry. This will take approximately 3 days. So our glitter paint is now dry, and the next step is to apply some varnish. Now that will smooth out the texture left from the glitter. It'll also bring a richness of colour out, and it'll provide a nice smooth layer for our next step, which is the detailing with the acrylic pens and paint. So let's get that varnish on. Okay, well that looks pretty good. You can let that dry naturally, or you can speed dry it with a hairdryer. Okay, that varnish is dry. The next stage is we need to put a thin black line around the outside and then fade it in as best as we can, and that'll create a dome shape to the eyeball. Let's get this black on. I find it's easier to charge the brush, wipe off the excess so you don't put too much on. Try to get this on as quickly as you can. Acrylic dries rapidly. To be faded out smoothly, it really needs to be workable. Once the blend is in, I'm just going to paint the edge of the canvas. This finishes it off nicely. Okay, we'll let that quickly dry, which shouldn't take too long, and then we can create the iris. Now dragons tend to have a sort of like a slit type pupil. So for that, I'm just going to quickly draw one up, make a template first. So I want it to be about this high and this high. I just fold a sheet of paper in half, and then I'm just going to draw this in like that. Then I can take my scissors and I can cut that. And because it's folded, I know it's going to be symmetrical. And I can also adjust it if I want. Yeah, so I'm happy with that. That looks pretty good. Once we have that in place, then we can retrace the outside of the template with a black paint pen. And these are acrylic, so it works really well with the paint. Then we can use that black paint again. We can fill in the pupil. Then we can add a series of little lines coming out from the pupil with that paint pen again. Make sure the black in the pupil is dry, or it can clog up the nib of the paint pen. Okay, that looks pretty good. We'll let that dry and then we'll add more pen. So the next stage is to create some fine lines coming out from that pupil along the iris, and this will create a fair bit of interest, and we'll use more of those paint pens for that. So let's get this on. The secret with using paint pens over acrylic is to hold them very lightly so you don't press too hard on the nib. I used yellow, orange, red and light blue and created them in wavy lines. So this is looking really good. The next stage is to create a white highlight or a shine. And we can do that with white acrylic paint, titanium white. Now the secret here is to have a little bit of water handy just to dilute your white so it's not too opaque, because you want to see the beautiful work that you've created underneath. So let's get that white on. So the last step is to apply varnish over the whole thing. So let's get that on. Leave this to dry and voila! For this next project, we'll be using a 30cm round canvas. For paint, we'll be using deep cyan, cerulean blue, turquoise, monastral green, titanium white and black, all in acrylic colour. We'll also need mixing cups, some pouring medium, a palette knife, a large filbert brush, a clean rag, a roll of tape to use as a template, 3 thumbtacks and a pack of paint pens and a palette. So we pour out a little of our chosen colours into the cups. We want the paint to be a little thicker than if we were going to do a general dirty pour. So we try to keep the ratio to approximately 1 part paint to 4 parts pouring medium and give them all a good stir. The first step is to press 3 thumbtacks into the back of the canvas to act as standoffs. Then cover your work surface and place the canvas into position. Pour the deep cyan over the canvas and spread it out so it is a consistent thickness over the surface. We then pour in some cerulean blue, monastral green, turquoise and then titanium white. These colours are applied in a circular fashion following the round form of the canvas. Now the paint's on, we can create a series of lines by dragging the palette knife from the edge of the canvas into the centre. When the lines have been created, we lay a rag over the top of the canvas and gently lift it from all 4 corners of the canvas. We then let it dry. This can take 3 to 4 days. Once the canvas is dry, we can start to detail it. The first step is to paint a line around the edge of the canvas in deep cyan. Use that big filbert to do this and try to soften the inside edge. To create the pupil, we lay a roll of tape onto the canvas and use it as a template. And with a black acrylic marker, we mark around the outside of the tape. Then create a series of small lines emitting out from the profile line. After the lines have been created, we squeeze out some black paint and fill the rest of the pupil in. Next, we create a series of lines over the iris emitting from the pupil with fine tip markers. Titanium white is used and then turquoise. Let this dry thoroughly. To suggest the eyeball has a shine on it, we can add some highlights onto it. So these highlights have some translucence to them. We put them on with a white acrylic marker, then soften them with a damp brush. The last step is optional, but to give a nice gloss to pour paintings, people sometimes use resin. It is also possible to get a nice gloss and easier with Montmartre clay varnish. Although this varnish is designed for clay, it is a copolymer acrylic and works perfectly on a number of surfaces. We pour some of the varnish directly onto the canvas and spread it out as evenly as we can. Leave this to dry and voila! Well, thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed this tutorial and feel like creating your own eyeball painting. For more projects, check out the Create section on our site. This is your new home of creativity, and it's certainly worth a look. For now, that's all from me. I hope you've had fun creating, and we'll see you next time.